If you have a preteen gamer in your family who struggles to control the habit, the findings of a new study will interest you. Researchers at McGill University have linked problematic gaming in 12-year-olds to mental health issues a year later. The lead author of that study, Vincent Paquin, joins me now to discuss. Vincent, good to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.
First, maybe just give us an idea of what qualifies as problematic gaming. How can we spot it opposed to typical preteen gaming?
Yes, it's important to make the distinction because a lot of young people play video games, and that in itself is not going to cause mental health problems, and I want to really emphasize that. In our study, we focused on problematic gaming, which refers to the difficulty controlling the amount of gaming. Usually that means increasing amounts of time spent playing video games, to the detriment of other activities and commitments. So for young people, that means relationships with family and friends, as well as schoolwork, and that causes psychological distress. So that's really what we mean by problematic gaming.
Tell us a bit about how you conducted this study. How did it work?
We analyzed a large cohort from the US, composed of over 6,000 pre-adolescents who play video games. They were aged 12 and 13 years old during that study. And we examined the association, the statistical association between their level of problematic gaming and the subsequent levels of mental health problems. And we also looked at potential, what we call predictive factors, so aspects of the kid's environment that could potentially reduce that risk of problematic gaming and mental health problems. The goal being to better understand how can we protect the mental health of young gamers.
What did you learn through this study? What is the outcome of problem gaming in preteens?
So in this study in particular, we focused on one kind of mental health problem, which is what we call psychotic-like experiences. So that's a range of experiences like paranoia, unusual perceptions, kind of like hearing voices that are on the spectrum of psychosis, but that don't necessarily constitute a chronic psychotic disorder like schizophrenia. And they are actually quite common, especially in context of stress, social isolation, and during adolescence. And we found that among this large cohort of gamers, the small minority who exhibited more signs of problematic gaming were at a higher risk of psychotic-like experiences the year later. And among gamers, those who had a more supportive family environment and who were in a more supportive school environment had a lower risk of problematic gaming, suggesting that being in a supportive social environment can help promote a better well-being among young people who play video games.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you next is, definitely the findings concerning. So what can parents do if they think their teen maybe falls into this category?
The first thing to do is to really try to make the distinction between a normal interest and even passion for video games, which is not necessarily going to cause problem. To the contrary, because we know actually that there are many potential psychological benefits to playing games, including creativity, social connection, sense of agency and empowerment. And so we have to make the distinction. But then if we notice signs that raise concern, like difficulty controlling the amount of gaming, consequences on schoolwork, and so on, then it may be helpful to intervene. And the first step of doing that is to sit down with the child or the adolescent and have a conversation to better understand what are the motivations for playing games, what happens in those games, and so on, because that shared understanding is really the crucial initial step before making any changes.
Vincent, I want to thank you for sharing the results of this study with us tonight. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.